Hello, everyone. Almost Happy New Year. And to help celebrate, I have my favorite beverage. I'll try not to spill it on my computer. Anyway, it is a dry martini on the rocks. It's a little bit out of the ordinary because don't usually have on the rocks in a martini glass, but and I have my olives as well. So anyway, I hope people are having their favorite beverage. Anyway, I wanted to hold this last Facebook Live because in a few hours 2024 will be over and 2025 will begin, and it's always a good time to sort of take stock as to what's happened, what have been some of the successes, what are some of the failures, and these kinds of circumstances. So anyway, I hope people can hear me because it's given me some notice that action's needed, but it often does that anyway, and it doesn't mean anything. Anyway, so if anyone's there, if you could just let me know if the sound is okay, that would be great. Anyway, so in terms of successes and failures of these circumstances, we have a number of successes, we can say. We have Powell River, which was, I think, a great success. We did a number of events there. The community is very mobilized in terms of trying to understand the threats to local democracy in that area. Quesnel, that was less of a success, I guess, but still managed to expose some things that went on there. And I'm hoping to have some interactions with more local councils in 2025. Brock University, that's got to be at the top of the list. That was a fantastic situation at Brock, the best event ever. And that's an interesting question to ask as to why Brock happened without any incidents, and there have been other difficulties in, for example, the University of Lethbridge and the University of Regina. And part of it is due to the circumstances at Brock, which has had a number of violations of academic freedom and has been held to account for those violations. the Thomas Hudlicki case, as well. There's a lot of organization, Tamari Kitoza, Kevin Kozine, and Ron Thompson. So there's quite a significant organization at Brock. So that's another important factor. University of Regina, I think we have to look at that as a success as well, even though that was a cancellation. But because of that cancellation, we got to go in and really test out the Spectrum Street Epistemology at the University of Regina and do a great documentary, the University of Regina Rumble, which I highly recommend watching for trying to understand what's going on in universities, especially the corrosive impacts of equity, diversity, and inclusion, ideology, and of course indigenization is one aspect of that. And I'm doing an article for the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship newsletter, which is looking at EDI ideology, and it's got a woke side, but it also has a corporate managerialist side. So it's quite a complex topic, the whole EDI area. So those were, I think, the major successes. The major failures, unfortunately, my arbitration has got to be, although people say I won, it could have been worse because I could have lost the case. So people tell me I won the case because it was found that my termination was disproportionate. So it could have been found that I had been fired with cause, which would have been a huge, terrible thing if that had occurred. But there's huge problems with the decision, and the more I look at it, the more I'm just outraged at how probably millions of dollars were spent on that whole process. It was a huge toll. It took a huge toll, I have to be honest. And then to come out with that just terrible decision with no reasoning, no legal reasoning, the 8 procedural grievances being dismissed with hardly any rationale, the arbitrator's acceptance of all the investigators' findings, which they're all contradictory. So we're no further ahead than we were before of understanding harassment in universities. And so, this is a major thing that I'm going to be talking about shortly in terms of what's going to be happening. I've got some news. I've got some interesting news that I want to share with you after I get through the general high points here. The street epistemology has been successful in some instances, and it has been a bit of a challenge in others. I think that the trans activism discussion at University of Calgary was probably one of the worst sessions, just because the conditions were not optimal, and it was very windy and difficult to figure things out, and that resulted in a rather superficial examination of that issue. We're going to have another stab at that, though, in 2025, looking at that article written by 3 MRU professors who argue that the Alberta government's attempts to make sports fair by having female-only categories based on biological sex is somehow not appropriate, according to these professors. And then they make very, very contentious claims, some would say highly dubious, that biological sex is not a fact, like this kind of thing, which is just how we've gotten here in with that issue is very hard to understand. Anyway, so we'll have another ability to come back at that, which brings me to another terrible situation that's happened. So for people who are unaware of this, I was working with Kathy Drake, who was a great free speech supporter, a student on campus. Anyway, Kathy, because of some comments that she made on social media, which I find it, and in the pub, so those are two, MRU is monitoring all students' social media activities, and you can complain about people if they say something that is offensive in the student pub. So she got 3 complaints filed against her and was being heavily surveilled by MRU. And so that means that getting her to help me with the street epistemology is going to be somewhat more problematic than would be ideal. So we gotta figure out what we're going to do about that in the new year. So that's kind of a bit of a taking stock. As I said, there's been some high points and some low points, but you've got to just put everything in perspective. We have to consider that although we might face terrible challenges, we can at least control our own mind. And that's the important thing to do. Is every morning I get up, and if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by things that are occurring, I just give myself a talking to and say, I cannot be defeated. by this. I have to face these challenges head on, and I can control how I react to these circumstances. And so, with respect to the arbitration, you know, I really think it is a terrible framework that I'm trapped within. And all I have to say is, truth and justice are the two things that I am trying to bring about. And if I'm searching for those things, if I'm seeking those out, then I can control my own actions. So, 2025. What's in store for us in 2025? There's something incredible that has happened. I was just told about this yesterday. It is currently, I can't talk about it because it's going to be the entities that are doing it that are going to want to lead on it. But it's incredible news, and it means traveling to Toronto and Vancouver. So hopefully I'll be able to do some other events in those two cities. And anyway, it is, I can barely contain myself because of what's going to be announced hopefully in the next month. So that's the first thing. Second thing, some very interesting news came my way. I have it on good authority that my union, the Mount Royal Faculty Association, is under criminal investigation for trying to punish someone who was defending me in the arbitration hearing. So, this is huge, and because of this news, I've been revisiting a lot of the things that have happened with respect to my relationship to the union, and I am sort of compiling all the problems that have come about in terms of their ability to fairly represent me, which I think they have not been able to do that. Like, there's been some good points, and I don't want to take away from some of the great work that the Canadian Association of University Teachers did, because I think they worked very, very hard on my case, so it's not about their efforts, but just in terms of the general, a lot of things that have gone on, those need to be grappled with, and there needs to be some accountability in terms of what's happened with respect to my relationship to the union. So that's something that I'm currently working on right now. And evidently, a production order was approved by a judge, and this was served on the union, which evidently enables the police to access the emails of the union. So I'm not sure if anything is going to come out of that. It's often quite a high bar that you have to reach in order for something to be criminal, but certainly it's shaken loose a lot of information. Things make a little bit more sense now in terms of what has been happening since October 2020. So there's been a lot of very questionable things that have happened since October 2020, and I understand these things a little bit more, and I'm currently working on this situation, and I'll be able to update you more when I figure out what I'm going to do about that circumstance. February 2025, I believe. That is going to be when the Lethbridge, the case against the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms case, my case, they're representing me and Jonah Pickle in our case against the University of Lethbridge and the violation of our charter rights by not allowing the room to be booked for my talk. This is going to be a groundbreaking case, one way or another. to determine whether the charter applies in this instance. So this is by no means clear, and we're going to fight that out, and we've already had huge success with this case because we got a production order with 15 professors at the University of Lethbridge. It is absolutely embarrassing that you would have professors who are so totalitarian in their mindset, who are running the show at the University of Lethbridge, and the ridiculous administrators running around trying to pander to those activists. So that's happening in 2025. I'm going to Halifax, to St. Mary's University. My colleague Mark Mercer who used to be the president of the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship. He's going to try to book some rooms. So we'll see how St. Mary's does in terms of the spectrum of reactions to attempts to discuss indigenization and academic freedom and grave error at Kamloops. Should it be described as a hoax or something to do with academic freedom in that case? And if I get cancelled, I'm going in with the Spectrum Street Epistemology into St. Mary's University to discuss academic freedom and that institution. So I haven't actually booked anything there yet. I'm still trying to get things organized. So that's the next university. I'm hoping to go to a university in British Columbia at some point. That would be great to do that, test that out there. But Halifax is going to be next. Canadian Political Science Association. June 3rd to 5th, 2025 at George Brown College, which is in Toronto. I'm going to be presenting a paper on the criminalization of residential school denialism, what's called quote-unquote residential school denialism, and what are the political and academic implications. So I haven't gone to the CPSA conference since 2019. That was the last time I attended, because COVID hit, and then I got fired, and so that kind of threw me on my back a bit in terms of my academic engagements and ability to concentrate and so on, write academic papers, which is not easy to do when you are dealing with the kinds of stress that I was having to deal with. But now I'm ready to get back into the saddle with respect to academic papers, and this is a great place to start. And as well, it sort of shows people that this criminalization of residential school denialism, if they were to criminalize residential school denialism, I guess they'd have to criminalize my talk on criminalizing residential school denialism. So where does it end? You could be asking. So that's great. And then finally, I've got the documentaries. That's really, I'd really like to, I need to get back into Mount Royal. So that is the demand, is that there's no reason why I can't be back at Mount Royal University. Now it's true, I'm criticizing MRU, I'm criticizing administrators, I'm criticizing some of my colleagues, but that is what academic freedom gives you the right to do. So the fact that people are using that as the excuse as to why I can't be back at MRU is kind of a ridiculous argument. And as well, everyone, many colleagues are standing up at meetings and making all sorts of defamatory claims about me, and I'm not supposed to be able to defend myself? Is this what we're going to continue to say in terms of this highly skewed way that we are dealing with the university not being able to uphold its academic mission. So that is really, I will take nothing less. I will fight to the end of my days to get back at MRU, and there's no problem. I've already explained, I realize that all these Indigenous scholar activists and trans activists and so on, I'm not going to be asking questions in the same way that I was before I got fired, because before I got fired, I thought that I could actually, right the ship. And now I have an understanding things are much more serious than they were. So that's the first thing, is that I need to be reinstated. But in the meantime, I'm doing a pivot to doing documentary videos about a number of issues. Of course, there's my case and academic freedom matters. So I'm currently doing a documentary right now, which Daniel Page is doing the editing for, on the March 5th, 2021 Arts Faculty Council meeting. And the reason why I'm doing a documentary on this is it's number 4, the example number 4 of my termination letter, where it's stated that I disrupted this meeting so much that the chat had to be disabled because of me, and this is a reason why my employment relationship with MRU is unviable. This was discussed extensively in the arbitration hearing, and we actually watched the arbitrator, Dean Pettit, myself, the lawyers, etc., watched the video of this meeting. And so the fact that MRU is bringing up this meeting again and again, even though it was found in the Jeff Hope investigation not to constitute harassment, and I did nothing improper, and it was actually other faculty members who had done things that were improper. The fact that MRU continues to bring this up time and time again, and Jennifer Pettit, the dean, even said this was the worst instance of me disrupting meetings, that gives you a sense of the ridiculous nature of the case against me. Anyway, I'm doing a documentary with all the background information on the meeting itself, and also the arbitration decision, the people who testified about it, which are Jennifer Pettit, Mary Lee Mulholland, the chair of sociology and anthropology, and Joe Anderson, who was the associate dean and the speaker. So I all have notes for their testimony, plus the arbitration decisions, discussion of their views. And so that's the first documentary. And then I've got a more significant documentary on residential school denialism, and how MRU was actually an incubator for this whole kind of censorious kind of allegation, which is now has the possibility of actually criminalizing residential school denialism. So there's 3 talks that have gone on, either at MRU or connected with MRU, about residential school denialism. One by Gabrielle Weaselhead, one by Travis Hay, and one by Keisha Supernaut. And so I wanted to do an analysis of those talks and put it in the context of the incubation of residential school denialism at Mount Royal University, or the allegation of residential school denialism at Mount Royal University. Then I'd like to do a documentary on Brock, why Brock was such a successful situation, and interview Tamari Kitoza, Ron Thompson, and Kevin Bozine about that, as well as what happened at Laurier, which also was a success. I don't want to downplay Laurier, but we did have a protest at Laurier, so it wasn't a completely incident-free event there. And then the major project that I'm working towards, which is academic freedom under threat. So I want to do a much wider documentary, but what I'm doing is I'm starting small with shorter and less complicated and less demanding documentaries, and then I'm going to move forward to the final project, which will then incorporate many elements of the previous documentaries. And the Holy Grail, which is a non-university situation, potentially. The Holy Grail is Kamloops. So I want to go to Kamloops, do Spectrum Street Epistemology in Kamloops, on the Kamloops case. And I'd like to do this at the library, at City Hall, because of course Kamloops is one of the municipalities that has been under attack by the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs. I'm not quite sure what exactly happened to lead to this attack, and I want to find that out. And then my favorite university, Thompson Rivers University, which, for people who are unaware of this, in 2015, Albert Howard and I went to Thompson Rivers. We were invited to Thompson Rivers University by a former student of mine to give a talk on the Aboriginal industry. And it went really well. It seemed like a fantastic kind of thing. And I was thinking at the time that maybe the tide is turning and maybe finally we're going to have more open discussion. Anyway, the next day when I got back, the CBC phoned up Albert saying that, something, investigating this racist presentation that Albert and I had given at Thompson Rivers, and it was just these sharks, these lawyer sharks who are part of the Aboriginal industry. What they did at Thompson Rivers was quite shocking. Anyway, I can go into Thompson Rivers and do some Spectrum Street Epistemology. I'm hoping to rent some rooms there to give the talks there and test out Thompson Rivers, but that's probably a bit optimistic. Anyway, I've had some interactions with a filmmaker there whose name is Simon Hirgot, and he was a video journalist for various media outlets, and he lives in Kamloops. Anyway, I'm hoping to connect with him in Kamloops, and we can collaborate on, developing a documentary on the Kamloops case. I think that's going to be that'd be a great project. Anyway, so that's pretty much what's going on in terms of doing a bit of a summary of 2024. I think that, there were some ups and downs in 2024, but a lot got accomplished. And certainly I was able to do a number of different events. I was able to do a bunch of different Spectrum Street Epistemology sessions. I was able to interact with people in the municipal councils, which I had no knowledge of before, and went through, got the first phase of the arbitration hearing done, which was unbelievably grueling, and I'm just coming out the other side out of that. Like I really was pretty exhausted after everything that occurred, but we were able to get it done. We were able to get all the reasoning, or lack of, on paper, and now we can take that and move forward with a better understanding. And I want to have like a bunch of mini documentaries on that decision, starting with the March 5th Arts Faculty Council meeting. And then I think 2025 is going to be an incredible year, just based upon the announcement that the news that I got yesterday, which is a way to start it off in a really great way. I can't wait to tell you about it when I get that information. Anyway, I'll see if there's any comments that people have. I don't think there's anyone here. So probably New Year's, everyone's getting ready to go out, have a few drinks, celebrate. So we don't want to be, stuck in there apartment or their house, watching stuff to do with the Francis Widdowson situation. But you'll be able to watch it at another point in time when you have more free time. Anyway, I just wanted to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and I look forward to doing more of these FaceTimes in 2025. Have a good evening.